Hi to everyone who's joining us live. I'm Zoe Clark. I'm Self-Management Programme Officer here at NASS, and I'm very happy to be joined by Ruth Larkin today, who is a sports therapist and a Pilates teacher. Hi Ruth, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'm good. Very pleased to be with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm really excited for you to join us. Now, before we get started, I'll keep an eye on the comments as we go through, so it'd be great if everyone watching can say hi, let us know if you're joining in. I imagine once we're actually started with the exercises, we probably won't get too many questions and comments because hopefully people will be joining in, but we will have time for questions at the end as well. And for anyone watching, please do put any questions for Ruth in the comments box, because we'll come back and have a chat at the end. And if you join partway through, you can catch up afterwards as well. So Ruth, before we get started, it would be great to have a chat about sort of what it is that you do with your Pilates and kind of why you got into Pilates, because I know you have Axial SpA as well.
Yes, so Pilates was kind of a sort of safe haven really for me. I kind of almost came across it accidentally. I went to ballet school when I was younger, and we did sort of some of our strength and conditioning training, but back then it was called body control. And so I didn't sort of link the two, but actually what we were doing was Pilates. So it's just, part of, strengthening and controlling your joint movement really. And then sort of in my sort of late 20s, early 30s, like many of us can probably relate, I did start to get problems with my hip, and I still sort of, tried to do the odd dance class just for sort of recreation, but, started not to be able to lift my legs properly, and sort of, the back pain continued. And so just sort of trying to find something else. I sort of tried a little bit of yoga, enjoyed that, and got into Pilates on the side. But when I became a sports therapist and did sort of my sports massage training, I found that everybody that I was treating could really benefit from some exercise, because of course, whether you go to an osteopath, a physiotherapist, or a sports massage therapist like myself, you can come and lie on the table and have a sort of passive treatment, every single day. But if you're not doing some sort of strength and conditioning exercises, whatever that might mean to you, then, sort of overall, there's only so much that manual therapy can give as support to you. And, obviously I'm a big fan of manual therapy. I go to see my wonderful osteopath every 3 weeks or so, which really helps me. But it's always alongside the movement. And of course, as we know, movement in itself is anti-inflammatory. So of course, it's never going to be a cure for any of this type of thing, particularly, if you do have quite bad pain. But it really does sort of help you in, my aim is really to just be a functioning human being and not have to think too much about my everyday activities. So with my Pilates practice, I don't really do anything particularly fancy. I'm not going to be standing on my head or doing anything crazy. It's just about moving your body in a very regular way that gives you that sort of sense of functional movement, sort of knowing your body and being a bit more in control of it rather than it being in control of you all the time. And my AS diagnosis came sort of quite late on. I am the typical 8.5 years it took of MRIs and various things. But yes, it was around sort of 2018 when, I had a really sort of quite severe flare up and ended up in hospital for a couple of weeks. And sort of the Pilates practice really, really helped me get back on my feet, like literally and figuratively.
That's really helpful, and thank you so much for sharing a bit about kind of your own experiences as well, because I think it's always really helpful in these live sessions, and particularly with exercise as well. It's quite hard to kind of really cover all bases with the exercises, and it's something we were chatting about beforehand, where we want it to be able to be helpful for people, whether you're in the middle of a flare up and you're finding it really hard to move, or things are really well managed and actually you just want something to fit into your daily routine to get those regular exercises. So I know that's something you'll be explaining through the session, which I think will be really helpful for everyone watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's also kind of, I take it, I mean, not as a positive, obviously, of sort of having something a bit wrong with me, but I do try to use it in my work, in that, you know, if somebody comes to me and they have a lot of pain and it's ongoing and it's chronic, like, I get you, I'm there as well. I know how tiring it is, and I know the amount of effort that it takes to just sort of, you know, get things done during the day. So I feel like I can, you know, sort of obviously relate to many of you out there. But yeah, the main thing to really sort of think about when we're going, you know, for any sort of exercise session, I mean, I don't know about all of you guys out there, but when someone says the word exercise to me, it kind of conjures up all of these images of like going for a run or a cycle or doing a triathlon. And that's just not what we kind of mean by exercise. I mean functional movement. Like, can I move my arm the way I want to move my arm? Can I walk around as much as I want to walk around? That's what exercise means to me. And of course, you know, we are all on such a huge spectrum with this. As Zoe just said, you know, some people might be sort of much more immobile than, you know, other people, depending on if you've got fusion, if you're just quite inflamed at the moment, whether you're not fused yet, whether your issue is in your neck or your middle back or your lower back or your hips. So this is really all about, for me, just kind of showing you some adaptations that I do in my practice, but also just to really encourage everybody to have a think about how it affects you on a daily basis. Now, of course, within your own personal experience, there's going to be a spectrum as to, you know, I don't personally get very much morning stiffness, which again might be very typical for lots of us, but I get anytime I sit still stiffness. So it doesn't have to be that this is done in the morning, it can just be any time throughout the course of the day, because our bodies like routine, and you can do the same kind of 3 or 4 quite sort of simplistic exercises again and again and again and again, if it helps you. And you might notice I've got a couple of things around me which I find really helpful, and it doesn't again have to be because you've got any sort of injury. It could just be because of, you know, we all have very individual shaped spines anyway. So I've got a little foam block here. If you don't have one of those, it doesn't matter. You might just need a little pillow. And again, it's a, you might need it, you don't necessarily. The one thing that I am never without, particularly when I travel anywhere, is a tennis ball, just because they're slightly squashy, and I'm going to show you sort of a little bit of muscle release with that. I just find that really useful. But also our friend, a lovely soft blanket. And you will also notice that I am not sitting on just like a little thin exercise mat. I've got, and all of these things are just, you know, very cheap, readily available items. Nothing is, you know, super specialized or anything. This is just, I think it's sort of meant a bit more for gymnastics, but it's just a sort of slightly firmer foam mat, because if I'm on one of those little thin sort of yoga mats, of course, it's really painful to be on a surface that's too hard. So yeah, this is what I prefer to work on, just makes everything a bit more accessible. But using a blanket is surprisingly handy for a few of the movements that we're going to be doing. But also it might just be that, as I'll show you, there's like a few little places that we can use it just to make everything just feel like a little bit more accessible, a bit more comfortable. Good.
That's so helpful. Yeah, and I love the look of that mat as well. Definitely much better than just a skinny little yoga mat.
Yes, necessary.
And I suppose for anyone watching, if at the moment they find it difficult to get down to the floor, can they do the exercises in bed instead?
Yeah, so everything that we're going to be doing today is just sort of, you know, accessible on your bed. Now, I'm sure that most people don't have a super soft, squishy bed. Maybe you've got like a memory foam mattress or a top or something like that. But what I would really encourage everybody to think about is, if you do struggle to get down onto the floor, that really should be something that you're aiming to do. There can't be sort of much reason to sort of really not be able to get down onto the floor, because that sort of movement of getting down to the floor and getting back up again is really a mixture of strength and flexibility. Now, of course, some of us have much more flexibility than others, but if you don't have enough strength to get yourself down, even if you're holding onto a chair and come down onto a knee and from there, it should be something that actually you prioritize practicing. And perhaps if you do a few of these exercises on your bed first, it's going to give you a bit more confidence to be able to sort of, you know, come down to the floor and get yourself back up again. Because I mean, I deal with this issue with some of my slightly older clients as well, in that if you ever fell down, you really need to be able to get yourself back up again. So having the sort of strength and the techniques to be able to do that is really, really important. But yes, you know, Pilates exercises are sort of multifunctional, so that, you know, if you're lying on your back with your feet up in the air, you're kind of in a reclined chair position. So you could just flip it that way and, you know, do a similar thing sitting in a chair. But I really would encourage anybody, and you can ask me sort of some specific questions, obviously, if you need to afterwards. But yeah, if getting down to the floor and back up again is a real issue, make it something to perhaps work on, because I have been there when I was on my little crutches and I couldn't lie on my back for about 4 weeks. So I really sort of tried, and I figured out that I could be on all fours. And that's where I started my rehab, but I'll talk to you a little bit more about that sort of as we go along as well.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. And actually, Gillian's put in the comments as well. Hi, Gillian, thanks for joining us. She did some standing and chair Pilates at the Bath AS course. So yeah, it'd be really helpful to sort of hear how that can be incorporated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hi as well to Helen, who's joining us. Yeah, we've got lots of people joining us live. So I think if you're happy to, I'll hand over to you to sort of start the exercises, and then we can come back and have a catch up and see if anyone's got any questions or comments afterwards.
Super. So yeah, everything that we're going to be doing today is really, really simple. But if you have never ever done Pilates before, don't worry at all. You just feel free to have a little watch. So you can see what we're doing, and maybe you can try it later on the catch up. So as I said, I'm going to start actually with my little blanket here, and there's a few ways that you can use it, because I know some people might have an issue with your neck. So when you're lying down onto the floor, you might need something underneath the back of your head to make you more comfortable. Or if, like me, your problems are sort of really around the jolly old sacroiliac joints, my right-hand side is now fused. So often that area is quite sensitive. So I might put a bit of extra padding underneath the back of my pelvis, particularly if I'm not in a space where I've got my lovely thick mat here. Or you might sort of, sometimes I have a little roll, and then it might sit sort of more into the middle part of your back if that's an area that's super stiff for you. But because we're talking about individualizing this, I'm going to sort of do the things that I normally do and just sort of point out sort of how you might adapt it if you don't have the same issues or symptoms as me, because, you know, obviously this is all about getting to know what works for you. So I'm going to have my blanket in my sort of red zone, my problem area. So I know I've got that little bit of extra padding. Now, when we're coming down to the floor, as we've just discussed, for some people it might be an issue. So perhaps you've managed to get yourself down, maybe holding onto the wall or holding onto a chair. And then we think, okay, we need to get down onto the floor nice and safely without causing any strain. So all I'm going to do is come down onto one side, and then I'm going to lower myself nice and carefully down onto one side, and then just take as much time as you need to just bring yourself over onto your back with the knees bent and the feet just planted onto the floor. So again, you might find that having your head just on the floor, if you've got any issues with your neck, you might need to just scooch a little block or a little pillow underneath. If your sort of head is tipping back and you don't feel comfortable on the ground, just make that decision for yourself. Maybe something like that will make you feel a little bit more comfortable. Again, maybe some extra padding underneath the hips. Or if you are doing this lying on a bed, then you should be quite comfortable, hopefully. And obviously I use comfortable in its loosest sense when we're talking to our group. It's all relative, isn't it? So the first thing I like to do when I come down onto the floor is just have a little bit of a check-in with yourself. So are the sensations through your body the normal sensations which you have? Or is anything changing? Is anything feeling a bit strange today? Is anything feeling more tender than it usually does? Maybe you're feeling a little bit tired. Whatever it is, just take the first moment just to notice how you are. And then we're going to see whether we can improve things as we go along. So I'm making sure that the back of my head, the back of my ribs, and the back of the pelvis are the 3 points of contact in the floor. And I want to encourage the natural curves of the spine in there. Now, of course, if you've got some fusion in the lower spine, it might feel like it's a bit flatter than it once was. So again, just notice what's going on for you. We want the toes to be grounded on the floor in order to keep the knees pointing forwards and up. So we've got nice parallel legs. And then I'm going to relax my arms down by my side so the shoulders relax. And I'm going to take some nice deep breaths because, of course, our breathing is really, really important, particularly if you have some pain. So we need to calm everything down. And the way that I do that is to breathe into the belly and the lower part of the ribs, trying to keep the upper chest quite nice and relaxed. So you might even want to have your hands onto your tummy and take some big deep breaths into your belly and a full exhale as you relax. So it's just that, just some breathing in. Are your ribs expanding sideways as much as possible? Are you feeling an expansion all the way around your waist and not too much in the upper part of the chest? This is really calming for the whole system because when you breathe out, your heart rate very slightly slows down each time. So it's that exhale that just relaxes everything and keeps us nice and calm. So once we've done a few nice soothing breaths, whether you're doing this in order to sort of wake yourself up in the morning or whether you're doing it to calm yourself down at night, either way, it's going to be super helpful. And then I'm going to think about my pelvic area first. I'm going to think about the hips, and I'm just going to start nice and gently tipping the pelvis forwards and then tipping it backwards. And as I tip back, I'm starting to squeeze my glutes, so your bum starts to wake up. So I don't know about you, but when I have sort of any sort of pain flare up, my bottom muscles tend to sort of go a little bit sort of haywire. By that I mean I can't really feel them very well. And of course, for our standing posture in particular, you know, everything around the sides of the hips and through your bum is really important for that posture. So I'm just making sure that they're alive and they're awake. Sometimes I actually have to sort of give them a little bit of a prod and say hello, and then give them a squeeze as you tilt this way, and then relax everything as you tilt forwards. And of course you can do this one as many times as you like if it feels helpful. Now, I'm not forcing the position, I'm just letting my body kind of go to where it feels like it can and where it feels like it can. And your shape of your body is not going to look exactly the same as my shape of my body. And that's the case with the whole population, not just sort of people with arthritic issues. Good. So when we've done a few nice gentle little tips forwards and back, we're going to do the side to side version. Now I'm going to put my block on my hips just for demonstration purposes so you can see what I'm doing, because this one is quite a subtle movement. So I'm trying to keep my legs nice and still, and with my pelvis, instead of that north to south tip, I'm going to do east to west. So if I imagine that I'm trying to make my block move like a seesaw, I'm going to tip the pelvis one way and then I'm going to tip it to the other way. So hopefully you can see that little movement. And this east to west tilt, I find personally, sometimes I get a really nice little release around the sacroiliac joint to the back. And yeah, sometimes it makes my tummy rumble as well, so you know that you're doing good work. So when we start doing these exercises really regularly, and by that I mean, you know, a good 4 or 5 times a week, definitely want to be doing some sort of constructive movement every day, just to get things moving. But, you know, by that, it could just be that you do some nice breathing exercises. There we go. But yeah, when we start doing movements that make your tummy rumble, it's a really good sign that your parasympathetic nervous system is just calming a little bit, which is always beneficial. Good. So I'm going to come back to the center, and hopefully I'm feeling quite level across the hip bones at the front. So these pointy bits at the hip bones at the front, if we imagine they've got headlights on, we want them to point sort of directly up towards the ceiling if at all possible. And that brings your pelvis into a neutral position. And then the next thing I'm going to do is try and wake up the muscles in the deep part of your core. So it's all those stabilizers. And again, very, very small movement, which should be achievable to anybody. And of course, if you were sitting in a chair, you could do a very similar movement, because we're just going to move the foot. So I'm going to have my hands resting on the hip bones here. The shoulders are relaxed, because we want to relax where possible and just work the sections of the body that we're targeting. I'm going to have a little bit of a squeeze on my tummy muscles, so I feel like I'm just gently pulling the belly button flatter. And then keeping the hips nice and still, I'm just going to lift one foot just an inch or so off the floor. And then I'm going to bring it back down, making sure that the hips don't move at all. I'm going to bring the other leg off. Now, if you're not used to doing this, you might find that your hips try to do a bit of a side-to-side movement. And it seems like a really, really small thing to be doing, but actually when you do it with precision, it's really hard to keep the pelvis under control. And that's really my whole aim with these exercises. As I said in the start, we want to be in control of our bodies, right? We don't want to have our joints dictate to us what we're doing. So I'm making sure that I'm aware of the muscles, and you can feel them just on the inside of your hip bones. If you sort of put your fingertips in there, you can feel a little bit of tightening maybe as you just do this little float of the foot up. So yeah, if you imagine that I'm tipped up sitting in a chair, you could be doing this, just lifting one foot very slightly off the floor, making sure you're tall through the spine and the pelvis doesn't move. Good. You might have to experiment with your sort of feeling. Obviously, we have different sort of types of learning. I'm quite a visual learner, so I like to look at somebody and copy. Some of you might like to listen to what I'm saying, be able to copy from there. Some people might need to sort of feel what's going on. So again, it's something for you to figure out for yourself. And just what are you feeling in the pelvis? Are we able to keep everything very, very still across the hips? I sometimes do this in class actually, and so I'm going to put a spirit level across your pelvis, and I do not want that bubble to move. And then we sort of get the level of detail that we're working with. Very good. We're just going to do one more of these little foot floats. Nice. And then relax all the way down. Now just notice, have you suddenly got loads of tension through your shoulders because you've been concentrating on this part of the body? That's another thing that's quite challenging with Pilates, is just sort of, you know, being in control of what's tense and what's not, because of course relaxing is just as important as tensing what we need to do. So the second movement, we're going to have a little look through the hips. Now again, we're controlling the pelvis, we're keeping that nice neutral feeling across those hip bones, relaxation through the chest. And I'm just going to let one knee open to the side as far as it can without tipping the hips over. So we're exploring that range of movement in that hip rotation. Now this is my fused side, so it doesn't go as far as my other side, which will kind of just flop out towards the floor. And then I'm bringing it back, but it's still controlled. So I am telling my knee where it's allowed to get to. And I'm telling it when it's coming back. The shoulders are nice and relaxed. So again, you're going to feel, if you've got your hands on your tummy, that actually there's some muscles working under there, even though it seems like quite a small movement. So to a sort of unfamiliar onlooker, it might seem like we're not doing very much, but when we get into the nitty-gritty detail of all of this, it's actually super hard work. Very good. And again, because we're doing one side then the other, it gives us the opportunity to see, is it normal, the amount of movement that I've got in this hip, or has it got any worse recently? You know, we can actually track kind of how we're getting on with these as well. We're just going to do one more each side. Very good. Still just as stable as we were at the start and coming all the way back. Good. So we're going to challenge our tummy muscles a little bit more. Again, keeping the shoulders nice and relaxed, keeping the head down. And all we're going to do is lift one foot up to our tabletop position. I'm going to tighten my tummy muscles a bit more to bring the second foot up. And then we're just going to walk them back down again, 1 and 2. And I'm going to keep going like that. Again, paying attention to what's tight and what's supposed to be relaxed. So it's just a nice, simple little walk. Now, when we lift up, it's going to be more difficult when we take the second foot up off the floor. So what we don't want is any arching of the lower back. We want to feel like we're in control of the shape of this part of our body as we move the legs up off the floor. Good. And of course, if you find this too difficult at the moment, you can build up to it. You can do those little foot floats until you're really practiced at those and they feel quite easy and quite accessible. And then maybe you can try lifting up a little more fully. And then of course, there's lots and lots of add-ons that we can do to make this more challenging. And in my second session next month, we're going to do some stuff which will just help sort of build our strength a little bit more. But I always come back to the basics. And as I always say in my classes, there's nothing basic about the basics. Certainly not easy, just because it's a simple movement. Good. So are we starting to feel like those tummy muscles are kind of really working? And we've not put any stress through the upper back. We've not put any stress on the neck. We're not doing anything fancy, but we're really working into those stabilization muscles through your trunk. Good. Now I'm going to do one more little challenge. If you're up for it, we're going to keep the feet up in the air. I'm going to take my arms up to the ceiling as well, like a dead bug. And I'm just going to hold it here. Now, the purpose of this hold is to see if we can still breathe, because often when we're in a stress position like this is kind of my metaphor for life at the moment, we often brace and we hold and we stop breathing. And of course, we want that nice relaxing out breath to keep everything calm. So can we still breathe whilst we're in a stress position? If it's too much at the moment, you can bring the knees slightly closer into you, and of course that's going to make it feel a bit more comfortable. This is quite challenging. You might see me starting to shake in a minute. So I'm keeping the arms quite nice and relaxed. They're just floating in the air. And I'm going to see whether I can come back to those big deep breaths that we did at the beginning, breathing into the waist and release. Can we still allow the waist to move with the breathing? Even in a stress position, have we got one more big breath? Good. And then we just hug the knees in towards the body. Thank goodness that's over. Well done. So again, it doesn't really look like a big fancy thing, but actually it's really, really tough when we go through in detail. So now just to release off from here, I've got my feet back onto the floor, the shoulders are relaxed, and I'm just going to let the knees come from side to side. It's like a little windscreen wiper movement. Again, nothing too fancy, and make sure that you're still controlling that movement. It's not just a flop from side to side. You're telling the knees how far they're allowed to go so it doesn't hurt you on that twist. You're in control. There we go. Don't worry if you get any little crunches. It's perfectly normal. There we go. Good. Lovely. So what we're going to do from here is come over onto the side to talk about our glutes and our hips a little bit more. So I'm just going to come over onto one side and I'm going to grab my trusty block to pop underneath my head, because we don't want that flopping down uncomfortably on the floor either. Again, you might have a pillow or a cushion, whatever you prefer. Now, I was talking to Zoe earlier because we both follow quite a lot of the physiotherapy action on Twitter, and there's been something sort of going around saying we should ban the clam. Now, this is the clam, obviously, for obvious reasons. And it's a really, really popular Pilates exercise. However, it does tend to sort of squash things at the back of your bottom. And if you're somebody who has any sort of sciatic nerve compression, then this isn't really an ideal thing to be doing. So I like to do my clams like this. So what I'm doing is bringing my body into a right angle shape. So my shins are down the edge of the mat, the knees are at right angles. And I'm not allowing the body to just lay down and squash into the floor. I've got that little bit of lift between my underneath side of the waist and the floor, so that we're still in a neutral spine and we're still working these muscles. And then I'm going to lift the whole leg up and down. So I'm trying to keep my shin parallel with the floor. So this is going to be working all of the muscles around the outside hip, that area that we need to be really strong for our posture, for our movement. And then when we've made it a bit sore, then we're going to stretch it out. So don't worry. It's that sort of constant balance between working something and then, yeah, making it just a little bit more comfortable again, because of course, in order to build strength in our muscles, we've got to kind of hurt the muscles a little bit. So if you're sore after exercise, it's not a bad thing. We just need to sort of have our little stretching techniques. And you may have noticed that actually some of the muscle soreness, whether it's caused by movements or whether it's caused by your inflammation, can be just as painful as joint problems. Now, obviously I'm chatting here just to distract you from this lovely little movement that we're doing. You might find that that outer hip is starting to cry at you. So my golden rule is that there's actually never a sort of ideal amount of repetitions. If you're very, very new to practice, a good guide is about 10. But actually, we're all so individual that what we want to do is go until we feel like, oh, crikey, this really is working through the outer hip. When you think you can't do any more, do 3, and then you're allowed to stop. So here's my 3. Whew. Good. 2 and 3. Very nice. Now, if your outer hips are crying at you, just have a little rest for the moment. If you feel like you're up for the second one, all we're going to do is lift that leg up so it's parallel, and then I'm going to draw circles with my kneecap round and round. So it's important to do lots of different angles of movement, not just sort of forwards and back and up and down. Got to go round and round as well. We're going to go the other way. Oh, crikey. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Very good. Now I know that everyone likes it when the teacher is complaining as well, because we know we're doing good work then. So yeah, none of this is easy. Right, that's all we're going to do on this side. We're going to just pop over onto the other side. But again, of course, we're going to bring ourselves off the mat, nice and carefully pushing up. And that's one of the reasons it's important to have good upper body strength as well, which we might tackle in the next session. And then I'm just going to bring my legs over to the other side. If you don't need to be facing front, of course, you could just flip over and come down onto my side nice and carefully to go round 2. So my head is relaxed on some support. I've got my waist slightly lifting. Everything is working here. Shins at right angles, and off we go, up and down. Good. And of course, so right now I've got my right leg on top. So this is where I have some more issues. So again, this is just personal for me. I just thought it might be interesting to share. So I know that on this side, my muscles are a little bit dead. I've got some nerve damage in here from an injection that went wrong. And I've got this sort of fusion on this right-hand side. So actually for me, it's quite difficult to feel these glutes on this side. So I do just give them a little bit of a prod and make sure that they're active. Because of course, this exercise really is to get those muscles working so that you can walk a little bit more easily. Maybe you can move a little bit more confidently. Good. And we're always aiming to try to do about the same number of repetitions on each side. So we're balancing out our strength and our flexibility. But we're not worried too much if there's a little bit of a difference, because we might have one side that hurts quicker than the other. But we're never going to shy away from something being a bit sore, because we're sore anyway. So maybe it's sometimes a distraction. Good. So we're keeping everything small, we're keeping it precise, but it's really effective. Good. So again, we're making the decision for ourselves. How many reps can you do? Might not be the same every day, but for me, I'm going to go, last 3 and 2 and 1. And I'm sure some of you can probably do more than me. Lovely. So again, you might want to miss out the second one if you're already feeling like you've had enough, but we're going to try and go for those little circles each way. So I'm going to lift up the knee and do a little circle round. There we go. So my circle is probably, I don't know, cricket ball sized. There we go. And the other way around. Good. Just 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Whew. Relaxing down, that's quite enough of that. So I'm going to bring you up now onto all fours. Again, just pushing the hand down so we can come up from the side, so there's no stress on the spine here. Now, if you've got any sore wrists, knee problems, guess what? We've got our comfy little blanket, friend. So my knees sometimes get a little bit sensitive. So it might be that you have your extra padding underneath. We've got to be comfortable. There's no point sort of torturing yourself more than necessary. So what I'm going to show you here, so as I was talking about, so back in 2018 when I had a really horrible flare-up, and there was absolutely no way I could lie on my back, like I couldn't actually walk without crutches for 2 months. So I figured out that if I could get myself down onto the floor using my crutches, I could start moving this way. And of course, as I was talking about, lots of the Pilates exercises that you do on your back, you can just flip over the other way. So I started with my cat stretch. Now, the way that I do a cat stretch is purely to mobilize the spine in its order, so like a caterpillar. So we're not just doing that kind of arch up from the middle and then splat, because that doesn't really do much. I'm thinking about those glutes because we need those. So we're going to breathe in. As you breathe out, I'm going to squeeze my muscles together. So I'm using the glutes straight away, and I'm going to start to tilt my pelvis underneath. So no other part of my spine is moving yet. You're just going to see this area start to curve. And then I'm going to squeeze my tummy muscles a bit more so that I suck everything in. And then I'm going to curve up through the middle part of my back, just as much as you can. And then I'm going to curve through my shoulders. And then at the last minute, I'm going to tuck my head underneath. Again, just where it naturally goes. And then I'm going to breathe out and go, just relax back into neutral. We're going to go again. So breathing in first, and then breathing out, pulling my pelvic floor muscles up, making those glutes work a little bit as the pelvis tucks underneath, sucking up through the tummy even more as the middle part of your spine starts to curve, then into the shoulders, then into the head, and then relax. Of course, all good things come in threes, so let's do one more. We're keeping the shoulders back, we're breathing in, and we're breathing out. As we suck all those muscles in, and we ripple up like that little caterpillar movement all the way through the spine. Good. And then we're going to release back to neutral. Now, my partner will hate me for saying this to the world, but he is quite funny about me being a Pilates teacher. And when I say I've got Pilates, he calls it stretchy, stretchy with a plank at the end. And that's mainly because I'm always doing planks, because planks for me is just a very quick multifunctional way of getting some really good strength into your whole body. Now, of course, if you're not used to doing planks, we can do them like this. So if you want a bit of core challenge, now, of course, if you've got problems with your wrists, come down onto your forearms. You can do it here. You know, have extra padding underneath your elbows, have extra padding underneath your hands. The other little trick, if you do have problems with your wrists, is to have your blanket and put the heels of your hand on the blanket and let the fingers come over the top. So it just takes that angle of the wrist to a slightly more comfortable one. So this is the way I'm going to plank with you today. Maybe in the next one we'll do some more advanced planks. But the elbows stay nice and straight. My spine is in its neutral shape. So by that, I'm not trying to be flat like a table. I'm letting my tailbone stick out slightly. I'm going to tuck my toes underneath, but if you have problems with your toes and they don't bend this way, you can keep your feet flat like this. So whatever works for you, or maybe you've got your blanket underneath your ankles to make it accessible. So again, figure it out. Whatever you need to do to be able to do it, it's going to be fine. So the first thing we do is just tighten the muscles around the waist, either feet flat, feet on your blanket, or tuck your toes if you can. And then I'm just going to lift the knees just a couple of inches off the floor. And everyone goes, oh my God, what are you doing to us? But yes, it's doable. And this is the way that I managed to get walking again, because I got my tummy muscles a bit stronger, having had them sort of absolutely waste away. I had very spindly legs when I came out of hospital, so we had to do something. And of course, if it's too much just to keep holding it, drop the knees, lift the knees, drop the knees, lift the knees, and just keep trying, because it will come. And this is where I show off slightly and tell you that my longest ever plank that I've ever done in my life is 10.5 minutes. It was just when I got off crutches, but it was the only thing I could do. So I just kept doing it, just every day, just a couple of minutes. Just keep doing it. There we go. Maybe we're just going to do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, and then we're just going to release. So my knees bend this way, and so I can come back into this little rest position here. If your knees or your ankles don't bend that way, if this is not a restful position for you, don't feel you have to be in it. You could just come and sit round. Whatever else is suitable for you. Just because somebody calls it a rest position, it might not be nice for everybody. Good. So we've done all the horrendous stuff. You've done really well, I'm sure. The last thing I'm going to show you is just this little bit of glute release with the tennis ball. So you could do it sitting in a chair, and all you do is put the tennis ball into the fleshy bit of your glutes. So we don't want it pressing on any of the bony bits. We just want it into the fleshy bit. And I'm just going to let the knee drop open to the side. So you can do that sitting in a chair. It's preferable to do it lying on the floor, but I know that's not sort of super easy for everybody, but I'm just going to show you. So we're in this position that we started off in. Again, just putting the ball into the fleshy bit of my glutes, and we're just going to do that little knee drop opening. Woo. And you'll find the hot spots and bringing it back. And I'm not really, trying to torture myself. I'm just trying to get that nice little bit of pressure, as if you're having a massage. And it's just going to stretch out what we've been working. Of course, if you are getting lots of inflammation around the lower back, around the sacroiliac joints, you might find this is really soothing, and it can help. Just obviously do a little bit on both sides. And it doesn't have to be just for the glutes. You could sort of put it in the back of your shoulder if you feel a little bit stiff there. Again, I like to use a tennis ball because it does have that bit of give. I know that there's lots of those sort of massage balls out there with little spikes on and things, but sometimes they're just a bit too harsh. And again, we're all tortured enough. We don't need to make things worse. Good. So once we've just had a little squash out through those glutes, we can come back to where we started, which is always what I like to do. So whether you're sitting up, whether you're on a bed, whether you're on your mat, whether you're on your thick mat like me, let's just round things off by coming back to our breathing, breathing into the tummy. And then again, just noticing, how does your back feel now? Have you got a little bit more length through the spine perhaps? Can you breathe maybe a little bit more easily? Does your body feel quite nice and calm? If you were to tip your pelvis forwards and back, is that easier than it was sort of 15, 20 minutes ago? And again, we haven't done anything fancy. We've just switched on those muscles that are useful, and we've got things moving. And then we can come back just to our sense of stillness, coming back to our breath, making sure we're okay, knowing that we've done some really good constructive movements and thinking about what it is that we perhaps want to achieve with our mobility, with our flexibility, and going from there. Lovely stuff. So I'm going to, of course, nice and carefully come over onto my side and come up, and hopefully everybody has found that sort of relatively accessible for everybody. And of course, yeah, I'm happy to answer any of your questions if anything wasn't clear. I know I tend to kind of throw a lot of information out there, but it's all you know, useful stuff, I think. How are we getting on?
Hi Ruth, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I had the much easier job of monitoring comments, but I promise I was doing all the exercises in my chair as much as I could. And even have my trusty spiky ball with me as well.
Oh, you've got the torturous one.
It does have, I got one where
it does swish. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, you've passed.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, no point torturing myself.
Oh my God, I know.
That was wonderful. We've got lots of people joining, and it was really good. Actually, Helen said that she'd been watching but not doing, but she found your explanations really good so that she can then do this later on. So that's really good to hear.
Good.
I have to say, I was probably most impressed by the amount of explanation you're able to do while doing a dead bug as well, without getting out of breath or anything. It's very impressive.
Yeah, it's just because I teach, you know, and this is kind of one of the things, like I'm really, really conscious that I'm kind of here in my little Pilates outfit, but I just want everyone to remember that this is my job. So if I've made it kind of look quite accessible, it's just because I get paid to do this all the time. Like I don't have another job, I don't have kids, you know, I just, you know, do this all the time. So it would be a little bit embarrassing if it didn't look quite accessible for me, but I don't expect everybody to just be like finding that super easy, because I'm quite good at pretending that it's easy when it's not.
No, absolutely, and it was really helpful the way you kind of mentioned how things can be adapted as people build up with that strength as well. I've just seen a comment from Gillian saying she's feeling a bit taller, so that's great to hear.
Yay!
And thanks for joining, Mark, as well. Yeah, we had a couple of comments as we went through. Mark actually made a really good suggestion at the beginning when you're doing those pelvic rocks. He said he does those on a Swiss ball, which is a really good idea to sort of get that movement, particularly if you're working at your desk on a Swiss ball. It would be a great way of moving.
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that I was going to mention actually, because I used my Swiss ball for rehabilitation a lot. And yeah, if you're sitting on your ball and tilting back and forwards, the other thing that I use quite a lot is a smaller Pilates ball, sort of slightly deflated. So you can have that underneath your pelvis and do some nice little tilts over that, because again, it's squashy, so it's not going to put any undue pressure where we don't need it. But it just uses gravity just to kind of help like lengthen everything out, because of course that's what generally we're lacking when we're feeling a bit stiff, and you know, sometimes you feel like you've got expandable foam in your joints. It's just all needs a bit of, you know, elasticity and a bit of length. So anything that's helpful is, yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, that sounds like a really supportive way to do it, just to kind of encourage that movement without forcing it.
Yeah, and of course you can go side to side on the ball as well, with little kind of hip hitch, that kind of thing, just all those movements.
That sounds great. And I know Alexa, who was watching, she we chatted in the comments where she said that in the morning she'll find that she'll do the more basic movements that you started with, so then through the day, as she's loosened up, she's able to then do the stronger exercises. So it's really nice the way you kind of broke it down on the kind of progressions that people can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of approach all of my classes like this, because generally I never know, sort of with the group that I have, there could be someone who's just had a baby, or somebody with osteoporosis, or, somebody with a frozen shoulder. So, you've got to sort of approach all of this with, oh, if you can't do this, you can do this. And it's one of the sort of mindset switches that I had to make is, when you sort of do have any physical restriction, you've got to start thinking about, okay, what can I do, rather than focusing on what I can't. And it was quite freeing for me, actually, sort of psychologically, that, it was really sad that I couldn't do sort of a lot of my ballet anymore because of just, the extreme positions that you have to be in. But what I can do, is plank for 10 minutes. I mean, I know the world record is like over 8 hours, but, doing my best.
I mean, for me 10 seconds is impressive, so no judgment here.
I'm going to get you to 2 minutes. This is going to be our challenge.
Okay. Maybe not before the next session. I'll try. I don't know how quickly.
Yeah, we'll build up. You just add 10 seconds every time you practice. Honestly, you'll be amazed. It's you build up really quickly. It's fantastic.
We'll see. Watch the space, everyone. You have to join next time. Actually, that does lead nicely into Robin's just commented, saying that he really liked when you said how we're thinking about kind of what we want to achieve with our flexibility and mobility. So you look at it kind of with that perspective, rather than just aimlessly plodding on. It is that kind of, what do I want to be able to do? Therefore, what shall I do to get there?
Yeah, and I think that can be a barrier quite often as well, which is why I kind of always share with people. I probably overshare with people, like, oh, this is what's wrong with me and this is what I do. And because I just think it's helpful, because, it's not kind of in a braggy way. It's just like, well, I've sort of been through this process and this is what helped me, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help you. So we're also individuals. So your day-to-day aim might be to, just be able to carry out your daily activities without thinking about your pain too much. Like, that is absolutely fine. That might be your goal. And I just think there's sort of too much of this language in sort of physio and exercise classes that, we're all supposed to be doing X, Y, Z. Well, that might not be for you. Like, it's not, it's not everybody's dream to be able to do the splits, like, and it's not functionally sensible either, really. So, we've just got to set our own sort of goals with how we want to live our lives, and just make sure that as far as possible, we're doing things that help us, stop being sort of prevented from doing the things that we want.
Definitely. And I think for everyone watching today, it's been really good to hear about your experiences with Axial SpA, because obviously everything's completely different. And also the fact that you say, where you came from to where you are now. And it shows that actually what we do need changes as well. So for example, for me at the moment, I just had to have a 5-week break from my Humira. So at the moment, it's just managing my pain and stiffness until the Humira kicks back in, which is very different from, 6 months ago when I had very different aims. So it's just nice knowing that, you can look at it, change it, depending on what you need at the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with our sort of movement patterns and functionality, it kind of is the same with our treatment options as well, isn't it? Because, what works for you actually made me worse. And what works for me is not supposedly, great for, this kind of treatment thing. But, it's, you've just got to sort of go through that journey. What I'm really hoping for actually is that the next kind of levels of research go into that area of like, okay, how do we test to see what works for each individual, rather than us all having to sort of plod through this trial and error process, which is, I'm sure lots of us have been through it, and it's just, a bit soul destroying, isn't it? But we get there in the end. We
do, definitely. We've got a couple of comments. We haven't got any questions so far, so if anyone's watching and you want to ask any questions of Ruth, anything sort of particular to you, please do pop them in the comments. We have got a comment from Rachel and from you, and thanking you for the session. It's been really helpful, and Rachel said particularly sort of doing them in the morning and evening, she found those kind of pelvic mobility exercises really helpful. Yeah, we've not got any questions so far. I don't know, Ruth, is there anything else you wanted to chat about, or?
I mean, not really. I think really, you know, sort of, as I said at the start, you know, my main kind of aim for us all is to really like take agency of what we're doing. So what are our aims and how can we make this work like for you? Because as I say, it's going to be different for me. It's going to be different for everybody out there. And I mean, a lot of it, it's not rocket science, really. You know, if it hurts, put a blanket under it. You know, that's kind of like one of my goals. I mean, I'm essentially a very lazy person, so I do like my blankets and my cushions. But you know, you will be amazed with what you can sort of achieve. And I think, you know, again, sort of some of the sort of miscommunication around, you know, exercises for arthritis can be that, you know, oh, well, oh, is this supposed to cure our pain? And of course, it's not going to. It's going to make us function better. It's going to make us deal with things better and hopefully sleep a little bit better, which is kind of, you know, the golden chalice, really, isn't it? It's getting a good night's sleep. But yeah, I just, you know, I will as well check the comments sort of afterwards. So if any questions pop up, I'll do my best to answer later. But hopefully that means everything was super clear.
Absolutely, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. And I've typed your social media in the video description as well, so everyone can find you afterwards.
A few bits and pieces.
Yeah. And we've got another session booked, so next month, so Wednesday 20th of October at 12 p.m. Ruth will be back to do, I've called it maybe like an improver session, but really it's going to be, I think, slightly similar but slightly more advanced options for people who want
to. I mean, generally when I sort of do something that's maybe more difficult, it doesn't necessarily mean a different exercise. It just might be doing it longer and slower. So this is like what some people call my endurance Pilates. But it's a way of kind of building up our strength without having to do anything super fancy. So yeah, there's still going to be lots of options. So it's still going to be accessible, but it will be just, you know, a few things that might be a little bit more challenging for those of us, perhaps like me, who aren't, you know, sort of super restricted. Because I know that, you know, obviously with this spectrum, it's nice to have something that's kind of, you know, for those of us who still, you know, can maybe, you know, do with a little bit more resistance. So yeah, we'll try and see what happens there.
That'd be really helpful. And for everyone watching now or on catch up as well, hopefully by doing this session frequently in the meantime, you might be able to build up more to those exercises in time for that session as well. And I have seen we've got a question from Susie. Firstly, she says, thanks so much for this, but she'd also love to know where your lovely thick mat is from.
Amazon.
Nice and easy.
Yeah, it was like 24 quid or something. It's, you know, super, the brand, it just says Lions on it, and I think it's like under the sort of gymnastic equipment or something. Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, that's really helpful. So for everyone watching, before we finish up, I'll just let you know that next week we have a session with Dr. Lindsay Cherry all about looking after your feet with Axial SpA. So that will be on Thursday, the 14th of October at 1 p.m. We'll run some ads for that, so you'll see that beforehand. But yeah, please do join us live or catch up afterwards. Well, thanks again, Ruth. That has been a really fantastic session, and I'm so glad we've already got you booked in for another session. So yeah, thank you very much.
I'll see you next time. Pleasure.
Perfect. And thanks everyone for joining. Take care.